Thank you, Rabbi. It's a great honor and privilege to talk to all of you today about a few topics that are very relevant to the Lightspeed story. And I'll also include in that story the Never Apart story, which is a gallery about unity, bringing people together through culture, and also the New Age of Union story, which is now an environmental alliance. And my nature is to do things and be persistent and let them develop over long periods of time. So I thought this talk was about empowerment, but it also happens to be also about persistence. So I'm going to weave both of them in together, and it takes both. It actually takes both to really scale any project, and of course persistence is absolutely core to having the patience to let something grow and to weather all of the ups and downs and challenges of that journey. So if you don't know what Lightspeed is, I started Lightspeed in 2005, so 17 years ago. It'll be 17 years next month. Actually, last week I just transitioned from being the CEO to now the chairman of the board. So it's been a very big journey for me. The actual company went through so many different phases, so very relevant to this topic of persistence. So what it was from the beginning was a software company. I developed software since the age of 13. I was always a Mac fanatic. Back when Apple was almost out of business, before Steve Jobs came back. So I was always building software in my teens and 20s. Worked for an Apple developer as an apprentice, and actually I wasn't an engineer. I just fell in love with user interface and the experience, and I designed from an artistic point of view, because I come from a family of artists. I designed user interfaces for businesses that needed a problem solved, and learned how to program to make it come to life. So I did that really as a one-man show for all my teens and 20s, and learned a lot about what people were looking for in software, and in particular retail software. There was a lot of retailers that were wanting to use the Mac as a platform because it was simple, but there was no good software. And I did that a lot in Vancouver. And when I moved to Montreal, I continued to do a lot of these individual projects, but realized at one point that there was a common need for a platform for retail on the Mac. And this is at a point where Apple was starting to really grow and explode with the iPhone, with the iPad, the iMac, and iTunes, and it was a moment where everything I'd learned up until that point, being persistent with sticking with the Mac platform, actually really paid off. So all that knowledge of building really in isolation all this software, it was time that I felt, okay, it's time to start a company. It's time to start something, but I had never led any teams. I had been this individual that was building software, delivering it, making people happy, and making sure that teams could use the software, but had never thought of myself as a leader. And so the first 2 years of Lightspeed, I remember as actually, I was laid off from a job because of a terrible divorce, and the whole project that I was working on went into the dustbin. So that was a bit painful. So I was unemployed, but there was lots of grants for you to start a new company. So I thought to myself, this is the perfect time to build this platform that I wouldn't be building custom software for each customer anymore. I could have one thing that we could configure and set up specifically for each different customer without rebuilding it for each customer. So that's how Lightspeed started. It took 2 years of programming until 4 in the morning, and that was really how I thought of my own contribution was to really just, on unemployment, the very little money that I had, just build this every day and every night. But what happened is the software ended up being pretty popular right from the beginning. There was a lot of Apple dealerships. Before there was Apple stores, there was Apple dealerships, and all of them wanted to have the software running in their stores. Because I came from that background, And so it really fit well with their needs. Lots of inventory in these stores, sometimes multiple locations, serial numbers, lots of complexity. Corporate sales, floor sales, repair shops, and that's the software I kind of been building all through my teens and 20s, that more complicated retail software. So those were our initial customers. But guess what? I lived on the third floor of a 3-story, the typical Montreal triplex, and I rented the unit right below me for Lightspeed's first office. And I would just climb down the back stairs and visit the team. And I really thought that what I was giving to this team was the software. That was my contribution. But as things grew and as people started to really buy this software, they needed more from me. They needed a leader. They needed somebody to explain, beyond these first few sales, what were we trying to put together? What were we building towards as a company? And so that was a moment where I started to actually look at myself very differently. Never had to actually ever think about it. I always wanted to have a company, but never really thought about what it would take to lead people in something that was growing very quickly. And so the first 7 years of Lightspeed are really unique because we didn't take $1 of investment. Typically you raise rounds from venture capitalists and so on. But what we did during that period is we built the company on our own sales. The product was very popular. But what that meant for the team was that we had to go through a lot of rapid change because we went from 0 to $10 million in revenue in that 7 years with almost no external input, no external money. And so that's a very unique journey, and actually I will never give it up looking back, because it actually gave us the DNA of knowing who we really were as a company and gave us a real true identity. And so later, when we did get external money, we raised, in the next 7 years after that, from 2012 to 2019, raised $300 million of venture capital money. At that point, we really knew who we were, and so we could endure all the new challenges and all the new pressures of external investors because we had a very strong foundation. And so that's sort of the first. That's like to give you an idea of the first 14 years. That's a long story. And then the last 3 years have just been us as a public company. Now we have all this other external pressure. And so the whole story is one of persistence, of growing and evolving so that you can, over time, take on more and more stakeholders. More and more people care about what you're doing. You're responsible to more people. You have more employees. You have people in different countries. You have customers that have all sorts of different needs. We went from retail to hospitality to even golf courses to hotels, all sorts of different kinds of stakeholders and all different kinds of investors. So that's sort of the evolution. The little bit about empowerment that I wanted to add in here is it was difficult to give up the programming, because that's what I was good at, and so at some point you're bringing people onto the team. I love design. I loved the coding. I loved compiling it and delivering it to a customer and seeing the reactions. But at some point you have to empower others, allow them to share the ownership of what you're doing, allow them to feel like they're owners of the company, of the project, in order for them to belong, to excel, which means you have to allow them to win, to succeed, to succeed for the company, but you also got to be there when they fail, and you got to lift them up when they fail. So that empowerment of other people, that sharing of ownership with the people in your team, it's scary. It's not easy to do. You have to teach them the value of persistence. Even though as the founder and as the person that's starting it, you go through a roller coaster emotionally, and by sharing ownership, you're also inviting a lot of your team to also endure some of that. And that's why I think as the founder, for me, it was a very important thing to have a spiritual foundation. At the same time as I started Lightspeed in 2005 is when I began my conversion. I mean, I grew up Catholic. So my Judaism grew at the same time as I grew the company. And it's part of the reason why I wrote my book, Age of Union, and I'm going to have a copy for everyone here, is part of the story that I share with people when talking about the business side of Lightspeed's growth. I feel like I'm leaving out the very, very important spiritual journey that happened at the same time that helped me with that roller coaster of emotions. It was an anchor for me. It was a solid foundation, and it allowed me to remind myself that it's not when I succeed or when I fail, it's not all because of me. When you make it all on your own shoulders, then that's the moment you become absolutely crippled with anxiety and aren't able to be a great instrument. And that's actually what spirituality and Judaism teaches us, is that spirituality helps you become the best instrument, the best conduit for the goodness of the Creator, and to bring that into the work that you're doing. And how does that help your team? If you can be a great leader, and you can be a great instrument, and you can weather through any storm because you're just trying to be the best conduit instrument that you can be, then you can remain calm. You can bring that sense of calm and allow people to go through all of the challenges, and in a way that's the key to persistence, is to remain steady. And so that's something that over 17 years I've sort of mastered a little bit, because people do look to you when there's tough times. They look, when you're the founder, they look at your face, they look at your reactions, they look at you on Zoom now to see whether you look like you're panicking. So it's the key, I think, to being successful in business is having that spiritual foundation that lets you not be the boat that rocks all over the place, but you're the ship that everybody looks to, that brings everybody together and allows those folks that are rattled by a situation. And when you're building something, this happens all the time. So that's a little bit of a life. Does anybody have any questions at this point? I know I've said quite a bit there. Thoughts, questions? Yeah.
What did you convert to?
It's a good question. I think that I did a year of computer science when I graduated. When I graduated high school. I was raised Catholic, and a year of computer science. And I mentioned earlier that I didn't approach software from an engineering point of view. I approached it from a design point of view. And I love user experience, and I love user interface. And so when I did my first year of computer science, which seems so natural for me, having done computers since a teenager, I was like, I'm not an engineer. This is like calculus, statistics, math. I'm like, I hate this. so I dropped out. I took a year off, built my solo business. But when I went back into university at UBC, I thought, what do I really care about? And the things that I really cared about that I wanted to live for myself, because I knew I had a career in software. And I come from a very spiritual family. My mother and father are some of the most spiritual people I know. My father actually is Catholic, but goes to shul on Saturdays and then church on Sunday. And my parents are not loud spiritual people. They're people that do things in the community. So we have a lot of that heart, that kind of heart. So I wanted to study the Abrahamic religions. I studied Judaism, Christianity, and Islam. And then the other thing I took was art history. And this is an interesting thing for folks of your age to know, those were elements that I decided I was going to invest time in, that through my life came back and rewarded me. I later opened an art gallery in 2015 because of all that art history that enriched me, that I had that. And what the religious studies did for me was I was studying Christianity, which I knew quite well, studied Islam, but I had no exposure to Judaism. And when the professor read from the Torah in Hebrew, something woke up. And that's something where I got goosebumps. And I think it's one of those moments where you either say, I'm not sure what that was, but I'm ignoring it, or you follow your heart. And so I followed my heart. It's part of the reason I moved to Montreal, since there's such an old and rich Jewish community here. So I could kind of quietly, not that my parents would have objected, but something I wanted to do for myself. What I found is after I did my conversion, I did my years of study, is that the more and more I invested in it, the more I was rewarded. And so it's been such a big part of my life. And so, university basically. Yeah.
First off, I just want to make a comment to the mentees how you have no idea how lucky you are.
Yeah,
The lineup of speakers that the rabbi has brought for you guys, like people will count dollars to hear these people speak, and you guys are very fortunate. One day you'll do another program, and you'll see that the quality may not be as good. So, just wanted to, we're doing persistence. When you speak in your own career where the line between persistence and the humility to veer off course and change something that is not working, right? Like when do you say, hey, I have to be persistent at all costs and bang your head against the wall versus, changing path?
I think it's humility is a key element to being successful in business. I think it comes more easily to some people than others. I think it's just a part of your character, but it's something worth honing. For me, I often don't believe I have all the answers. So I think that humility is something that's a little bit more a part of my natural composition. And I think it's helpful for all of us to be humble and to hear. And that's why I think being a good listener as a leader is really, really important. Often we think that if the more that people hear us speak, the smarter people must think we are. But you'll notice in a room when there's a leader that's listening, you actually often respect them so much more, and they actually seem a lot smarter. And that's because that leader is smarter. They're listening. They've got the humility to really take in everybody's thoughts, and that's how they come to the best solutions. Is by being humble. And I think that when it's the opposite of humility is the ego. If you're full of ego, you have absolutely no room. First of all, you have no room for God. You have no room to learn anything. You have no room to learn any other solutions. So it's by being a vessel, by being humble, that actually you are able to bring a lot in that can help you find the best answers, and you're continuously problem solving when it comes to business and any project. So humility is key, and it's often something that in a team there's going to be a big variety of people, and as a leader, it's probably one of the number one things that you can train your team in is don't assume that because you're the leader you have to have all the answers, and that you have to, once you find the answer, then be a strong leader and direct people and get people all on the same page. But until you know that, be humble. Yeah.
As a leader, how do you weather the storm of the retail investors in leading a public company?
You have to think. Everything you have to think about is the long term is important. You always have to think about what you're building in the long term. If your day to day internally in the company has tons of problems, then the long term may not end up being great. You know what I mean? You have to design your company, and you have to design how you're performing for that long term. So retail investors, share price, all of these things, that's a sentiment for this moment that doesn't reflect what your long-term value is. And that's ultimately what's the most important. But if you feel like what you're building is not good long-term, that's when you have a real problem. Yep.
Imagine that there were failures along the way, maybe not mega failures, but failures nonetheless. How do you deal with those failures, and how persistent are you, or stubborn, if that's a different way of calling it, and not giving up?
Yeah, there's you know what I say in business is that there's in a single day you can have 10 failures and 2 wins in a single day. You know, some of them are larger magnitude, and some of them are we lost a customer we really liked, or we just lost an employee that was like somebody that we thought was our rock star. They're like cuts. You get little stabs, little cuts all through your day. And it's those 2 wins that you get in a day that are the thing that those are the things that you should let fuel you forward. And it's the other 10 things that are where you learn. It's where you learn how to be a better company. It's where you have to think about it that way. And because otherwise that continuous learning or failing will take you down. You know, it's a part of it's the nature of the beast. And sometimes, to some degree, not everybody in your organization is necessarily built to take on all of that. But as the leader, you're often the person that knows all of it, because you're the person that sees the whole picture. You see the finance, you see the people, you see the product, you see the sales motion, you can see what's happening in support. So you know the totality of what's right and what's wrong. There's rarely a moment where it's all right, you know. So I think it's the failures that help you be a better company and learn. I think the toughest ones, the toughest failures for me have been all around people. When there's been somebody who we've brought into the company with the best of intentions and tried their hardest, but it didn't work, and you felt you failed. You feel like you failed them. They feel like they failed. It's tough. The whole team now is to see that person leave. I think those are the human failures more so than the big mess ups on software or a big outage. Those things are, you know, unless it's really, really bad, those things happen. But I think it's the people, those kinds of things where you feel like you failed somebody that are the difficult and more emotional things. And that's all, again, where you know, having a spiritual aspect to the way you approach business is important. Yeah.
First of all, thank you for being here. It's fascinating to hear all the speakers, and everyone's very lucky. In the material, we have a parable where an admiral talks about the little achievements on a daily basis, and he talks about how he makes his bed in the morning, and that's one particular thing that he focuses on. Is there a trajectory that you have in your mind about how things from day to day are structured from when you started to now, and how things have changed or evolved, or how you structure your day? Or is there particular habits for the mentees to know that allow for success through persistence, or make little wins every day and get little victories?
Yeah, so I think it's So I just talked about like the 10 failures, the 2 wins. We really, because there is so much going on at the company, we always try to remind ourselves to celebrate the wins and to celebrate them together and to recognize people and to, because you won't survive. If everybody fixates on the things going sideways, you know, it needs to be countered by the wins.
Talk about personally. Is there
Yeah.
something in your
Oh,
daily
it's something
habits
I do on a daily basis.
that has evolved or that has been consistent through the years?
Well, well, interestingly enough, I've gone from being a complete night person, coding till 4 in the morning, to actually doing a lot more earlier in the day. You know, so my day starts with, to fill in, it starts with jump rope, it starts with, I can write with the most clear head in the morning. So I used to be super creative at night, but now I'm filling my mornings with all the things that set me up, you know, for a day where I feel properly set up, and then I can go into meetings. Because you have this moment. This is really hard to do, but it would be amazing if the first thing that we did was not look at our phone, because there's this moment where you wake up where you can fill your head with whatever you want to set the pace for your day. So you could choose Instagram, or you could choose or TikTok, or you could choose something that actually does set something amazing in terms of, and that's something I've tried to do. Whether it's reading something that's challenging or inspirational or business minded or spiritual, doing something for your body so that you get the energy. I mean, for me, if I didn't do the jump rope, I don't have the energy, and maybe some weights too. So those are the things you can do for yourself that I find now that the days have gotten harder, that I need the morning to be great.
So I'm intrigued by what you said before, that you sort of teach your people humbleness, and so sort of going back to empowerment last session, when you have thousands of employees, how do you create that culture of empowerment where people feel that ownership to succeed, rely on one another, but also feel like they can do it, and that it's no longer on you?
And it's interesting in this moment that we've been in for the last 2 years, how do you show that when people only see you on Zoom and through like communications on email? And that's going to be part of the way the world works from now on. So you show it through example. You show it through, like, if I'm doing a town hall, which we do much more frequently, or we do company emails, which I write every week, because now we have to stay so much more connected. By example, I'll call out somebody or show how a group is succeeding, or show how we're problem solving, or admit to the whole company, we don't know the answer to how we solve this. This is what we do know. And so it's not about talking to our team. It's talking with our team. And that I think implicates everybody to be a part of figuring it out and understanding that we're human and don't know all the answers, and that the team collectively is way smarter. Yeah.
So you mentioned earlier that you find it important, whether it's for spirituality or whatever, when the vessel is rocking, so to speak, you're able to kind of keep it going straight, and all of your people under you look at you and they see kind of what's going through your head. What is an example maybe of something that you do to ground yourself in that moment to kind of help people, calm, put everything at ease, even if it's like the craziest day in the world, or you have the worst news or something just terrible? Because at the end of the day, it's a cutthroat industry that you guys are in, right?
Yeah, I can think of like, I think sometimes humor helps. I think that, like some of the worst moments, it's in the past. It's like probably, I can think of maybe it's maybe 2015 or before, where we had a retail platform that's in the cloud. Right now, today it's like rock solid. But when it was scaling from a few thousand customers to like 10,000 customers, the cloud systems and the way our software was programmed didn't quite match, and it would go out for hours. And so, you know, what we did at the time is we had kind of Lightspeed Fire Department. So we had like everybody get up on stage, and we almost had like a fire department. So we kind of got people sort of thinking, okay, you know what, we're in this period that we need to one by one like rebuild pieces of the software that are vulnerable because we've scaled so fast with the amount of users we put on this, because we've been selling the heck out of it, and we've succeeded that way, but now the system can't keep up, right? And we knew we're not going to be able to solve it with one fix. We knew it was going to be a few months, and so we had to institute this fire department. So people were in this mindset now that we're firefighting, and that it's going to be a little bit of time before everything is stable, you know. But you just remind people, and this is another good lesson that my chairman before me, Pat Pichette, former CFO of Google, I love this phrase that he taught me. He said, repetition never spoiled the prayer. And what it means is that sometimes when you're talking to your team, you feel, oh, it's repetitive, I should say something new, it's like, it's kind of old hat, but repeating things gives them more power. And it takes sometimes for you to hear something a few times from a leader in order for it to really sink in. So it's like, we're the fire department, we're the fire department, we're the fire department. So that's like, you know, when people start to really feel like, oh yeah, we're firefighting, you know, and it's going to be a couple of months. So that's one way where you can help people get through a crisis, is lighten the situation as much as you can. Another thing I want how much time do we have? Few minutes. Another thing that I want to talk about, which relates very much to persistence, is, you know, today Age of Union is now started as a book, and now it's focusing on the environment, and we're doing environmental projects around the world. And this is like a true test of persistence, because this is not just a business that employs 2,000 people. This is a whole planet, a whole biosphere, a whole ecosystem. There's many ecosystems that are under you know, attack that we have to be persistent about. So we have to get good at persistence collectively and feel that calling collectively. So that's I think, you know, after all of these years of applying it to first Lightspeed and then the gallery for a little while, which was a side project. Now to apply some of those things that you learn from business to something that's maybe a bigger calling, you know, like our very planet, I think is valuable. And I think that it's, you know, however successful you are in the business world, there's many of those things that you're going to be able to take into a lot of social good, where people need folks that are driven and that have learned lessons like empowerment and persistence to apply to some of our bigger problems, and actually, you know, do tikkun olam, you know, improve the world.
Any of the fellows have any last question?
So Dax, thank you very much for sharing not just your journey, but really sharing your passion, your drive. It's very, very special to be able to have, I think, fellows, high school students. This is very valuable. You know, sometimes they go over your head, but what we're hearing today and what you heard all the time are very, very valuable. Help us in the pursuit of leadership. And I was very happy when Dax said that he wanted to share his book. I met Dax after I read his book, because I read his book. A very, very powerful book, and it's a real treat to be able to everyone to have this gift. We want to wish you, Dax, in your new movement to become chairman, and really taking a more active role in your efforts of environment or any other projects. God willing, the Israel project should happen soon, so that you should continue to be successful and continue to inspire many, many people.
Okay, so we learned that in order to be persistent, you have to do something that you're good at, and if you realize that like the thing that you're trying to persist for is not for you, then you should just drop it because sometimes it's not worth it and it's not like your strength, and if it's not your strength, then you shouldn't try to persist. And also it's important to like have like a good like partner and a good like family and friends that support you and that keep you going. And sometimes like if you have like doubts and people are like pushing down your idea, then you should just tunnel vision on yourself and you shouldn't let distractions get at you. So yeah.
So I want to highlight a quote. Perseverance is the hard work you do after you get tired of doing the hard work you already did.
So the first thing that we aborted was that you must be persistent in what you do, but you also need to know when to stop, because you can't continue doing the work, and if you fail and fail and fail, yes, you have to go continue and say, no, I'm not going to fail, I'm going to continue, I'm going to do well. But you have to understand at a point that if it doesn't work, and there's no point of continuing because you're just inflicting more pain upon yourself, there's no point of continuing.
Yeah.
We talked about the persistence and the importance of never giving up. Even if you get to a roadblock, you should just find a detour, another way to get to your goal, and you should never stop trying, no matter what.
So it's easier to be persistent when you have structural values and convictions.
So we learned that persistence is the ability to move forward even after you're hit and knocked down. We had a guest speaker who was very persistent, and he was able to succeed in his works and succeed at building a company because of that persistence. And we learned that even when you're knocked down, it's important not to give up if you're feeling good about the subject and you want to be persistent in it. So yeah.